You have been trying to fix your belly fat alone, counting calories alone, tracking macros alone, going to the gym alone, and it is not working the way you expected. Here is what nobody tells you. The people around you are already deciding your belly fat, not you, them. A study from Harvard Medical School followed over 12,000 people for 32 years. They found that obesity spreads through social networks the way a virus does. If a close friend becomes obese, your own probability of becoming obese increases by 57%. Not because you share food, not because you live in the same neighborhood, because human biology is wired to sync with the people around us at a hormonal level that most of us never see. 7 habits in your social life are either quietly melting your belly fat or quietly building it. None of them look like diet. None of them look like exercise. Stay with me because habit number 6 is the one most people actively avoid thinking about, and it may be creating more visceral fat than anything else on this list. Before we start, drop a comment. Do you usually eat alone or with other people? And does the amount you eat change depending on who you are with? I want to know where most people watching this are starting from. Here is the biology behind why social life shapes belly fat through 3 specific mechanisms. First, social contagion. Behaviors spread through social networks. Eating patterns, activity levels, sleep habits, all of them flow between people who spend time together. What feels normal to you is largely determined by what is normal around you. Second, social hormones. Genuine human connection triggers oxytocin. Oxytocin directly suppresses cortisol production through the HPA axis. Lower cortisol means weaker fat storage signal to visceral fat. The quality of your relationships is literally changing your hormones. Third, social environment as the strongest behavior predictor. Willpower is finite. Social norms are not. When healthy behaviors are the default around you, they require no effort. When unhealthy behaviors are the default, you are fighting an invisible current every day. A study published in the New England Journal of Medicine confirmed that social ties produce measurable biological effects on body composition independent of genetics and shared environment. Your social life is not separate from your biology. It is part of it. Habit number 1. Eating with other people instead of eating alone. This is the habit that naturally lean people tend to have without framing it as a health strategy. Look at cultures with consistently low obesity rates. France, Japan, Mediterranean countries. Meals are social events, sitting, talking, taking time, not a solo activity squeezed between other things. The French paradox, where people eat significant amounts of butter and cheese while maintaining lower obesity rates, has multiple explanations. One of the least discussed is that they eat together and they eat slowly. Here is the mechanism. When you eat with others, conversation naturally interrupts your eating. You put your fork down to speak. You listen before the next bite. The meal extends over 20 to 30 minutes instead of 10. That time matters biologically. Satiety hormones, specifically CCK and GLP-1, need 15 to 20 minutes to travel from your gut to your brain after you begin eating. When you eat alone and fast, you finish before those signals arrive. Your brain has not received the fullness message yet. When you eat with others, the natural pace of conversation gives those hormones time to complete the journey. You feel genuinely full rather than just having stopped eating. Social eating also activates your parasympathetic nervous system. Rest and digest mode. Digestion is more complete, nutrient absorption is better, and insulin response is lower from the same food. A study published in Appetite Journal found that people eating with others consumed their meals significantly more slowly and reported higher satiety at the end compared to solo eaters eating identical food. Mark is an engineer who ate lunch alone at his desk every day in under 10 minutes. He started eating with colleagues 3 to 4 times per week. A month later, his 3 p.m. craving for something sweet had largely disappeared. Not because the food was different, because the lunch was more satisfying when it took longer and involved conversation. Fix. Aim for at least 1 meal per day eaten with another person. Not a formal dinner, just someone at the same table with actual conversation. If no one is available in person, a video call during a meal creates a partial version of the same effect. Habit number 2. drinking alcohol at every social occasion. This is the mistake that peer pressure makes almost automatic. You arrive at the gathering. Someone hands you a drink before you have made a decision. Saying no feels like a conversation you do not want to have, so you take it. Not because you planned to drink, because the social default was already set before you got there. Here is the cumulative cost of that pattern. Every night you drink, your liver prioritizes processing alcohol over everything else, including fat metabolism. Your body cannot burn fat and process alcohol simultaneously. That overnight fat-burning window we covered in the sleep habits video is blocked for as long as alcohol remains in your system. If you socialize 3 nights per week and drink each time, you are losing 3 of your 7 overnight fat-burning windows every week. Nearly half your weekly fat-burning capacity is gone from one social habit. A study published in Alcoholism Clinical and Experimental Research found that social drinking occasions produced significantly higher alcohol consumption than solo drinking, with the presence of others being the strongest predictor of total intake per occasion. The social context is what makes it happen more than the desire to drink. The fix is making the decision before you arrive, not after. Decide in the car, before you walk in. If you are not drinking tonight, you have already decided. Keep something in your hand throughout the event. Sparkling water with lime, a non-alcoholic drink, anything. Nobody is paying as much attention to your glass as you think they are. Habit number 3, not having social support for your health goals. This is the habit that makes everything else on this list easier or harder, depending on whether you have it. Naturally, lean people tend to have at least 1 or 2 people in their lives who share similar values around health. Not gym partners necessarily, just people who think walking somewhere is a reasonable thing to do, or who cook at home regularly, or who go to sleep at a reasonable time. Nobody in their immediate circle is actively working against those behaviors. Here is why that matters more than most people realize. Willpower is a resource that depletes throughout the day. Social norms are not a resource. They are an environment. When healthy behavior is the default in your social environment, you do not spend willpower maintaining it. It is just what people like you do. When unhealthy behavior is the default in your social environment, every healthy choice requires spending from a limited account. Eventually, the account runs low. And the path of least resistance, which is always the social default, wins. A study published in JAMA Internal Medicine found that having at least one social support contact who shared health goals was associated with significantly higher rates of sustained behavior change compared to attempting the same changes alone. Fix. You do not need to replace your existing friendships. You need to add at least 1 or 2 people with similar health values into your regular life. A walking group, a cooking class, a running club you show up to occasionally. When healthy behavior becomes normal in at least one part of your social world, it stops requiring the effort it used to. Habit number 4. Eating more because of who is at the table. This is the habit most people have never heard explained. You sit down with a group for dinner. You had no intention of overeating, but the meal ends and somehow you ate significantly more than you planned. Not because the food was exceptional, because of who was sitting next to you. This is called social eating contagion, and the research on it is specific and striking. Your brain uses social cues to calibrate portion size when there is no clear stopping rule. When you do not know how much to eat, which is most social meals, your brain observes what people around you are eating and uses that as a reference point. Large portions at the table signal large portions are acceptable. Your brain grants itself silent permission to match. A study published in Appetite Journal found that participants eating with a companion who consumed large portions ate 29% more calories than people eating alone or with a companion eating normal amounts. 29% more from one social cue. No additional hunger. Just calibration to what felt normal in that setting. Fix. Make your own decisions about what and how much to eat before you look at what others are doing. Order or serve yourself before observing others at the table. Your brain anchors to the first number it sees. If that number is your own reasonable choice, the calibration works in your favor. If it is someone else's oversized portion, it works against you. Habit number 5, choosing social activities that involve sitting. This is the habit naturally lean people seem to gravitate toward without consciously planning for it. When they suggest something to do, it often involves movement. A walk somewhere, a hike, exploring a neighborhood on foot, cooking together, a dance class, A farmer's market, not as a sneaky way to exercise during social time, just because those activities genuinely appeal to them. Here is what is happening biologically when you socialize while moving. You are creating NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is calorie burning from regular movement rather than formal exercise. But you are also generating oxytocin from the social connection happening simultaneously. Oxytocin suppresses cortisol. Low cortisol during gentle movement is the optimal fat-burning environment your body can be in. You are burning fat from a place of biological calm rather than stress. The combination is more effective than either alone. A study in social science and medicine found that social physical activities produced higher exercise adherence, lower cortisol responses, and greater fat burning compared to solo exercise of equivalent intensity. The same movement, done with people you enjoy, burns more fat because cortisol is lower, because the social environment changes the hormonal context. Lisa and her friends replaced their monthly dinner out with a monthly cooking class and a weekly Sunday morning walk. Same social time, same connection, but now with movement built into both. 3 months later, the group noticed their collective energy was higher, and several of them had quietly lost weight without anyone having dieted. Fix. When planning time with people, default to an active option over a purely sedentary one when the choice exists. A walking coffee date instead of a seated one. A cooking session instead of ordering delivery. A casual hike instead of a movie. You are not choosing between social life and fat burning. You are letting them be the same thing. Habit number 6. Maintaining relationships that create chronic stress. This is the one most people do not want to look at directly, because it requires acknowledging something uncomfortable. You have a relationship in your life with a colleague, a family member, a partner, a friend, that consistently leaves you drained. Not every interaction is terrible, but there is a low-level tension before seeing them, a lingering agitation after, a background anxiety that you have simply gotten used to carrying. That feeling has a biology. Chronic interpersonal stress is one of the most potent triggers of sustained cortisol elevation that exists. Not deadline stress, not financial stress, relational stress. Because relational stress has no natural resolution point. Work stress ends when the project finishes. Traffic stress ends when you park the car. Relationship stress follows you into the kitchen, into your sleep, into every meal you eat. It runs in the background continuously. And continuously elevated cortisol continuously signals your visceral fat to accumulate. 3 times more cortisol receptors than fat anywhere else in your body. Your belly fat is the loudest listener. A study published in Psychoneuroendocrinology followed participants for 5 years, measuring different types of stress. Chronic interpersonal stress was significantly more predictive of visceral fat accumulation than work-related or general life stress. The relationship stress outlasted and outweighed everything else. Fix. This is not advice to remove everyone difficult from your life. That is rarely possible and often not the right answer. But it is a direct request to stop treating the chronic stress from a difficult relationship as simply emotional, as though it has no physical consequence. It does. It is showing up in your belly. Where you can, create distance or boundaries. Where you cannot, invest more intentionally in the relationships that do the opposite, which brings us directly to the final habit. Habit number 7. Not investing in. At least one genuinely safe relationship. This is the simplest habit on the list, and possibly the most powerful. Not the most impressive relationship, not the longest friendship, not the person you have known since childhood, the person you feel most yourself around, the one you do not have to perform for, the one where a real conversation happens rather than a managed one. Here is what that relationship is doing biologically. Genuine, attentive, real-time connection with a trusted person triggers oxytocin at levels that produce measurable hormonal effects. Not scrolling their Instagram, not watching their stories, not texting back and forth. Actual conversation where both people are present and honest. That quality of interaction directly suppresses cortisol through oxytocin-driven HPA axis inhibition. When cortisol falls, the storage signal to visceral fat weakens. Fat burning becomes easier not because you did something physical, but because your hormonal environment shifted. A study published in Psychoneuroendocrinology measured cortisol recovery after a standardized stress task in people who then either sat alone, texted with a friend, or had a face-to-face conversation with someone they trusted. The face-to-face group showed significantly faster cortisol recovery than both other groups. Texting produced almost no cortisol benefit compared to being alone. The medium matters. Your nervous system evolved to respond to real human presence and real human voice. Digital approximations of connection do not trigger the same response. Fix: identify the one or two people in your life that fit this description. Then invest in that relationship the way you invest in other health habits. Schedule real time together, not just message threads. Show up for it the way you show up for things that matter. That relationship is doing something for your belly fat that no supplement, no diet, and no workout can replicate. Here is the complete picture. Habit 1. What lean people do naturally. Eating with others naturally slows eating pace and gives satiety, hormones, time to reach the brain, producing genuine fullness from the same meal. Habit 2. The common mistake. Social drinking at every occasion blocks overnight fat burning 3 or more nights per week, eliminating nearly half of weekly fat burning capacity. Habit 3. What lean people do naturally. A social support network where health is normal converts healthy behaviors from willpower battles into effortless defaults. Habit 4. The common mistake. Social eating contagion causes people to eat 29% more when seated with others who eat large portions, driven entirely by unconscious social calibration. Habit 5. What lean people do naturally. Active social activities combine NEAT and oxytocin to create an optimal fat-burning hormonal environment that solo exercise cannot replicate. Habit 6. The common mistake. Chronic interpersonal stress from difficult relationships produces sustained cortisol elevation that is more predictive of visceral fat accumulation than any other category of stress. Habit 7. What lean people do naturally. Genuine face-to-face connection with at least one trusted person produces oxytocin-driven cortisol suppression that no digital interaction can replicate. Here is what I want you to understand before this ends. Belly fat has never been a solo problem. It is shaped by who you eat with, who you move with, who creates calm in your nervous system, and who creates noise in it. You have been trying to solve it with individual choices made in isolation. But your biology has always been responding to your entire social environment. Every meal, every relationship, every gathering. The habits of naturally lean people look different in public than they do alone. Not dramatically different, but consistently different in small ways that compound into a completely different hormonal baseline over months and years. Now you know what those differences are? Try one change in your social life this week. Just one. Which of these 7 surprised you most? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. If this changed how you think about the connection between your relationships and your belly fat, subscribe to What Science Reveals. Real science explained clearly every single week. And if you want to see how stress habits and evening habits connect to everything we covered today, those videos are right here. See you in the next one.